Hi there. We're going to talk about Walgreens and why Walgreens was freaking out. What happened? We're going to take a look at the text, some of the texts that were shown to the jury in day 14 of the Sunny Balwani trial. And why is it important? Why is it important to tie Sunny Balwani to Walgreens? What does that have to do with? I'll give you a hint. It has to do with some of the counts that he's being charged with. So let me give you some updates first. Let me tell you that the community tab on my channel is now open, so I can talk to you directly and you can talk to me. And by the way, I have another idea. I'm thinking about live streaming. I'm looking at my schedule. I may be out live streaming. It may be a surprise. So I encourage you to subscribe to my channel because the live stream is only going to be open to those of you who subscribe, at this point anyway. All right, so hi there, I'm Michele Hagan. I'm a legal analyst and a former prosecutor. You may recognize me because I provided a lot of legal analysis on the Elizabeth Holmes case. In this video, simply my opinion. I want to hear what your opinion is. What's your analysis of what happened with Walgreens? The whole debacle with Walgreens and what Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani may not have told Walgreens. So this video is educational and informational purposes. So please do leave a comment, leave a question. Please do subscribe and support my work. All right, so let me give you a little bit of background. So the testimony today, day 14 of the Sunny Balwani trial, was a executive from Walgreens, and they were testifying to their relationship with Theranos. Who was the point person? Were they working with Elizabeth Holmes? Were they working with Sunny Balwani? And why does that matter? Because the Walgreens relationship, they went and Theranos partnered with Walgreens to open up these wellness centers in the Walgreens stores. So you could walk in and you could get your blood tested through the Theranos, right? So there was advertising that went on. And I'm going to show you not only the text between Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani, the evidence, because it's one thing for us to tell you, and it's another thing for us to show you the evidence, right? And I'm also going to show you a PowerPoint presentation or a slide deck, whatever they call it, that was given to the board of directors and what the board of directors of Theranos and what was contained in there. Okay, so stay with me. Please do subscribe, leave a comment. All right, so let me show you. First of all, I want to show you these wellness centers. I want to give you a visual of what these wellness centers look like if you walked into Walgreens and wanted to get your blood tested. All right, so let's take a look at that first. Then we'll get into the text between Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani. Well, here it is. Here's Walgreens, right? And they're proudly displaying Theranos, the blood test reinvented, located near the pharmacy. So here they're advertising, right, the services. And why does that matter? Because 4 counts that Sunny Balwani is charged with, so was Elizabeth Holmes, but she was not convicted on any of these 4 counts, these patient-related counts. But the prosecution is trying to tie Sunny Balwani to these counts. So how can they tie him to the patient counts? Well, who had the responsibility? Who was the one that was working with? Who was the point person with Walgreens? Was it Elizabeth Holmes or was it Sunny Balwani? Right? And so what kind of advertising, what kind of statements were made at Walgreens regarding the capability, the fast, accurate, reliable blood testing that Theranos provided, right? The representations that the government is trying to prove were fraudulent, right? So if they can tie Balwani to these 4 patient counts, 3 relating to patients in particular, they either got false blood results, or the 4th count was relating to the advertising campaign. They paid, I think, over $1.2 million to roll out the advertising, to put in newspapers, radio, and TV to let everyone know, prospective patients, prospective customers of Walgreens, to come in and get your blood tested by Theranos because it was fast, accurate, reliable, and cheap. Okay, so this is part of an exhibit, part of the evidence. So let me show you. Let me scroll up here. I want to take you to the beginning of this. This is what was presented to the board of directors at Theranos back in let's take a look here. Yeah, October 8th, 2013. And it was a confidential presentation to those who are on the board, right? So they were Elizabeth Holmes and other representative of Theranos. Maybe Balwani was involved in this, but I just want to show you the background here. So here's some of the advertising. Goodbye, big bad needle, right? Then there's the agenda. I'm just going to scroll through. You can take a look at this. All the different areas they were covering at these board of director meetings. Their strategic plan. And again, this is part of the marketing. The only thing you should feel is better. The blood tested, reinvented. Here are the nanotainers. The lab test reinvented, same test, smaller sample. Okay, now here is here's an article that showed up in the Wall Street Journal. And I encourage you to take a look at this because this was written by Joseph Rago back in, I think it was 2013. Yeah, September of 2013. Now this is 2 years before the Wall Street Journal, John Carreyrou, published that article that blew the whistle on Theranos. Okay? And that's also why Walgreens started freaking out. And I'll get there, so just hang with me. So you might want to read this. You know, this is a whole write-up about Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes. You know, it talks about would require only microscopic blood volumes, finger stick to draw a few droplets of blood, you know, and that wasn't true in the Holmes case. The nanotainer is then run through the analyzers in the Theranos lab. The results are usually sent back to a physician, but a full blood workup, apparently Joseph Rago got his blood analyzed because he said it was in his inbox by the time he walked out the door. So, and this was a whole press release that was sent out letting the public know that Theranos was launching a partnership with Walgreens. All right, well, here's a Wall Street Journal article. This was also talking about Theranos launching in Silicon Valley. I think they opened their store on University Avenue. Yeah, 300 University Avenue in Palo Alto. So you can go ahead and look at this. You know, look at the representations they were making. Were they true or were they false? And this is what this is part of the materials they were providing to prospective investors, as well as, in this case, the board of directors, right? They were talking about a long-term partnership with Theranos, new lab testing services through Walgreens pharmacies nationwide. That was their hope, right? This is what they were rolling out. And the problem is that one of the allegations in the indictment that Sunny Balwani is facing, just like Elizabeth Holmes was, is whether or not they had a partnership, you know, they were building a partnership with Walgreens, whether it was successful or not. And, you know, it fell apart. And it fell apart because there are things that they found out, that Walgreens found out, and they started freaking out. So I'll just scroll through this so you can go ahead and look at this. They talk about, you know, the ability to run microsamples. Well, sometimes they were taking venous draws, right? They weren't using the little finger stick blood droplets. And they were talking here about minimizing human error through extensive automation. Well, if you remember, even in Balwani's case and in Elizabeth Holmes' case, part of the defense in the Holmes case was that it was the lab techs that were screwing up. It was human error. It had nothing to do with the technology. Well, here it's saying in this article that it was automated. So how does human error come into that? Anyway, just an idea I have. And again, this is just my opinion. All right, and it talks about how she worked for the past 10 years. Theranos worked to relentlessly reach a point where they could basically roll this out. And then I wanted to show you, let me get to the wellness centers. I thought I would give you a visual of these wellness centers, these quite attractive wellness centers in Walgreens. I'm just kidding. Okay, so Theranos Wellness Centers. See, so Theranos is now in Walgreens. They're advertising, right? So they get patients to come in, right? So what representations were they making to the public? And what representations were they, putting out there at Walgreens? Daniel Edlin, who testified last week, testified that Balwani was in charge of Walgreens. and that he had worked with, Edlin had put together the materials. And he also told us, if you go and look at that prior video I did from last Friday, you will see that Edlin testified that there were representations that they made in Walgreens, in booklet, in brochures that prospective customers could look at. And I think I think it was Erin Tompkins, I think in the Holmes case, she testified that she actually did read through some of those materials, if I'm correct about that. Anyway, so they're talking about, Theranos Wellness Centers will be rolled out nationwide. Go ahead and look at this. And here are the attractive wellness centers. Looks pretty peaceful, right? Great place to go get your blood drawn, right? Nice and relaxing atmosphere. So those are some pictures that they presented to the board of directors to show them, this is what the wellness centers are going to look like at Walgreens. And here's another shot. So anyway, I thought that would be interesting. And they're talking about, how having this partnership with Walgreens, they could have Theranos, wellness centers available more so than their competitors of Quest and LabCorp. All right, so anyway, that's all I wanted to show you there. Let me show you the text between Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani and why Walgreens was freaking out. Okay, and I also want to point out some of these texts to show you, what was the communication between Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani? Because the defense is arguing in Balwani's case that, he was basically just following, I think this is what they're arguing, that he was basically just following the direction of the CEO, right? He was the COO. He was just executing what the CEO told him to do, what Elizabeth Holmes told him to do. So I'm going to show you some text between them, and also I'll show you the part where things blow up with Walgreens and people start jumping ship. So you can make the call and you can make your own analysis. All right, so let's take a look here. So again, these are texts that were downloaded from Elizabeth Holmes's devices, right? So, and they were between Sunny and Elizabeth. And here's, he's talking about Sunny. Sunny's talking about we have an opportunity to put telemedicine in our contract with WAG. And by the way, WAG stands for Walgreens. And that's Sunny talking to Elizabeth. Okay, so you can scroll through these if you want, but I'll get to the parts that I think are pretty interesting. So this is 2015 now. This is about 6 months before that article comes out, the reporting comes out in the Wall Street Journal that John Carreyrou did that basically blew the whistle on Theranos. Okay, so we're looking at about 6 months prior to that. So this is again Sunny talking to Elizabeth here. I am thinking it will depend on the discussion tomorrow with WAG. So that's showing that Sunny Balwani is the one who's working with Walgreens, which corroborates what Dan Edlin testified to. Okay, and it's also pointing the finger at Balwani here. Okay, we'll keep going. You can go ahead and read these. It's all about, rolling out centers in New York, launching in New York, how many stores they want. Okay, so Sunny talks about here on April 9th about going into a WAG meeting. That he's telling Elizabeth he's going to have a meeting with Walgreens. He said that it was the most terrible meeting, but net, it's what we want. So that shows, again, Sunny's the one who's working with Walgreens. He's meeting with these Walgreens representatives. Even though it was a terrible meeting, they're getting what they want, according to him. And then he points out here, right, and this is going to the finger stick, right, because what happens is Walgreens finds out that they weren't doing the procedure as they represented they were, okay, and I'll get to that in a second. But he says here, Sunny texts to Elizabeth, the point about narrowing down the menu. They wanted to narrow down the blood testing menu to hit a high FS, which stands for finger stick percentage, came to me like a gift of God. So he must have had a conversation with Walgreens, right, where he's negotiating the services that Theranos is going to provide. So again, that ties him potentially to those patient counts. And also, this also, big picture, does this show that these two, Holmes and Balwani, were conspiring to defraud Walgreens or patients? I mean, what do you think? Look at these texts. Okay, so He's talking about narrowing down the menu. Why is that? Are they having problems with the results on other blood tests? Is that what's going on? Are they having problems with the finger stick results? And then he's talking about meditating. He's talking about we must not lose. You can read these. Okay, and we're going to get to the very interesting text here with Walgreens freaking out. Okay, so Elizabeth asks, are they helping you on the WAG contract? So she's reaching out to Balwani and saying, asking if someone's helping him with the WAG contract. He responds back by saying, no one on the WAG contract, the Walgreens contract. He didn't want anybody on the the Walgreens contract. He wanted to do this himself, right? Send it to her. And he says, this is you and I need close to our chest. Why are they keeping the contract close to their chest? Why? What's going on here? Interesting. Okay, now we're going to get to, I think it's a couple more pages here. This is all deleted out. This is how the exhibit appears, right? So Sunny again brings up the topic about Walgreens. I presented CA, I think but they asked me why we don't do CA with WAG out of curiosity. I told him CVS had a better footprint in Southern California, but Walgreens is not too far behind. So again, Balwani is talking to somebody about their partnership with Walgreens, and also whether or not they were going to roll it out in Southern California, and potentially with CVS too. So Sunny again says to Elizabeth, we will talk about WAG when you are back. So again, he is keeping Elizabeth informed. I mean, can't that be argued? Isn't that what that says? And then he says, I sent you the contract to cover and the cover note. Please spend time on that so I can send it out. So he can send the contract back to Walgreens. He's sending it to Elizabeth Holmes. Does that show that Elizabeth Holmes is the one that makes the final call? It's her company. She's in control, just like the defense has argued? Or does this show that Balwani is the one who exclusively, works with Walgreens? He does all the footwork, and then she basically just signs it. Is that what this suggests? All right. And then he reaches out and he says, and the fact we are not growing with WAG. They weren't growing. And this is May of 2015. And why that's important is because several of these patient counts are around this time period. All right. So if they weren't growing with Walgreens, what were they representing to patients and to the public? And then he says, and the fact we are not growing with Walgreens is something they're trying to understand. So I guess Sunny was trying to work out another contract with some other company. I don't know. And then he says they are all lemmings. They only want if others want it. So I assume that's his conversation with CVS and telling him about probably the great relationship and all the success they're having with Walgreens. Maybe that's what this suggests. But what it shows is that he's keeping Elizabeth Holmes in communication and constant contact. They're talking back and forth about what's going on with Walgreens. She's being appraised of what's happening. She's not out there, he only talks to her occasionally. They're constantly talking. That's what these texts represent. And then he says, the minute I said California, his question was why CVS, why not Walgreens? So again, Sunny's the one who's out there with Walgreens. Instead, if Theranos was strategic to them, he would have jumped on it. So Sunny is probably trying to convince somebody, probably a representative from CVS, to go ahead and roll out some wellness centers in CVS. All right, so let's see, what else do we have here? And then Sunny is letting Elizabeth know they had the highest volume day today, 547 in WAG. I think that means 547 blood tests from Walgreens. And again, he's telling Elizabeth Holmes this. And that is August 2015. So we're about 2.5 months out from that Wall Street Journal article. But also during the time at which these patients are going in and using Theranos blood testing services. And here it comes. Sunny says to Elizabeth, JC article is out. Who's JC? Any ideas? It's John Carreyrou, and that's the Wall Street Journal article that came out. So he's letting Elizabeth know on October 15, 2015, at 4:21 in the morning, the article is out. And guess what happens? Walgreens starts freaking out. So do a lot of other people. Why is that? Because what is written in that article? In the Wall Street Journal article. Okay, so you can go ahead and read this, and then I will get to trying to do these in order here. So anyway, Sunny also texts Elizabeth, same time, a couple hours later, just worried about FDA and CMS. FDA, he's worried about the FDA. Why? Are there representations in that article that aren't true? Is that what happened? Is that why Sunny's concerned about the FDA? And who's the CMS? Centers for Medical Services, who did the audit of the lab? And Sunny says, but okay. And Sunny says, I have to take this risk. Well, that's a heck of a risk, right? Because he's facing the consequences right now. Okay, so again, it's just my opinion. I don't, maybe he honestly believed this stuff, it all worked. All right, you can go ahead and read this. This is talking about, I'll let you read it, about Rupert, etc. And then here's where people start bailing. So if you look at, this is the day after the Wall Street article. I think it's important to send this email. So he's trying to encourage Elizabeth to send out the emails to the investors, to people they have partnerships with, because they're trying to do damage control on that Wall Street Journal article. So it says, I think it's important to send this email, but it doesn't help with a public beating. Youch. All of our partners are bailing one at a time, and same with investors. So here's where this is it. This is the beginning of the end of Theranos. But it shows, Sunny's telling Elizabeth. And then this is where Sunny says, dignity, wag, everyone is posturing to walk away. We are losing leverage fast. Again, this is tying Sunny to Walgreens. Have you talked to Walgreens? So she's now reaching out. Maybe she's reaching out to Sunny, directing him, guiding him, controlling him. Maybe that's what they're going to argue. Telling him to reach out to Walgreens. And he responds back to Elizabeth, they are not talking for now until their lawyers say so. And then Elizabeth says, to us, ? Sunny says yes. At the C level, I assume that's the corporate level. Elizabeth says, their lawyers told them not to talk to us, ? Sunny says yes. Elizabeth says, wow. I guess they didn't understand the implications of the Wall Street Journal article, or they thought that their relationships were stronger, or maybe they never made any misrepresentations. I don't know. How do you explain Elizabeth saying, wow? Anyway, Sunny says, not exactly, but they will bring all this up about finger sticks, etc. in contract negotiations. So I think that's Sunny telling us. I think that's Sunny telling Elizabeth, and also potentially now the jury, right, in the Balwani case, that there were problems with the finger sticks, that there were problems with the representations they made, right? Because it's all going to come up regarding the contract negotiations. And then Sunny says it's going to be a very difficult 12 months. Well, why is that, Sunny? Why is it going to be a very difficult 12 months? And Sunny says our CLIA lab failed. Okay, so now this is tying Sunny to what was going on in the CLIA lab. Just like Daniel Edlin testified that Sunny was responsible for the labs, the CLIA lab. Here's Sunny saying that the CLIA lab failed. Why is it failing? Okay, so here is, I think, the last page. Oh, and then Sunny says, miss old days. These days are not worth whatever we're trying to do here, he says to Elizabeth. They must have been under a tremendous amount of stress, don't you think? Anyway, I'm laughing because it's just, that Wall Street Journal article was devastating. Okay, so then Elizabeth says, let me know how it goes. The facts are on our side. So Sunny's reaching out to the partners, to Walgreens, etc., trying to do damage control. Elizabeth says, let me know. The facts are on our side. Sunny says, I know. I'm strong on facts. They always react to anything but I will be strong. Okay, and so here it is. Here's Walgreens freaking out. So this is 2 days. No, this is the day after the Wall Street Journal article. The evening after. Sunny says to Elizabeth, okay, WAG is freaking out. Walgreens is freaking out. Lack of transparency. Well, that lack of transparency could be argued to be, it wasn't lack of transparency, it was fraudulent misrepresentations. Isn't that what the prosecution is alleging? And then he says why they found this all out through the media and not through us. He's asking, why are they reading this in the Wall Street Journal? Why didn't they hear it from us? She says, Kay, but that's what we'll do. And then Sunny says, why we didn't let them know about turning off the nanotainer. They were turning off the nanotainer and they didn't tell Walgreens they were doing this. And then Elizabeth says, did you tell them it literally just happened? He said, yes. She said, and we hadn't finalized a plan with the FDA yet and still haven't. So Elizabeth is trying to come up with an excuse, a reason why they haven't told them. Sunny says, I told them we were surprised by the article, the Wall Street Journal article, as much as they are. And then Elizabeth says, then let's show them that this is still up in the air. So we literally just decided, since the discussion is getting aired out in the press. In other words, Elizabeth is trying to come up with the reason why they didn't tell Walgreens. She's trying to say, we just came up with this. And he says, okay. And then he says, however, issue is we didn't tell them in advance about switching. And that's going to hurt. That's going to hurt. We didn't tell them in advance about switching. Why not? Why didn't they? And Elizabeth says, we'll have to present well that we hadn't decided to. Yes, it is all about presenting well. But in some people's mind, presenting well equals fraud. Right? Present well. Does that mean you're changing reality to present a different picture? To say that we were just deciding to turn off the nanotainers? And then, again, just my opinion, and then Sunny says, bad idea. At this point, they know. The jig is up. They know. So we need to be transparent. So this is Sunny telling Elizabeth, hey, we have a problem here. We have to be transparent. I mean, can the defense argue? He's less culpable here. He's trying to tell Elizabeth, no, Elizabeth, we're not going to be presenting well. We're going to be transparent. We're going to tell them what really happened. And then Elizabeth says, again, she's thinking, calculating, right? Thinking about how she's going to do damage control and explain this. When he says it's a bad idea at this point, they know, she says, how long has it been that we didn't tell them? How long has it been that we didn't tell them? And Sunny says 3 to 4 weeks. Now, can the defense argue that Elizabeth Holmes wasn't part of this? Or how do I want to say this? That Sunny Balwani was not, was the one who was hiding the ball here from Elizabeth Holmes? Or is it because she just doesn't remember that they've been talking about that, they haven't been telling them this about how they turned the nanotainer off 3 to 4 weeks ago? And Elizabeth says right here, I'm trying to remember what our thinking was on that. So again, this shows the two of them working together. 2 or more people have an agreement to commit a crime. That's a conspiracy. Conspiracy to defraud investors, conspiracy to defraud patients, right? Is this going to conspiracy to defraud patients? Is Balwani on the hook for this? So then she says, I'm just trying to remember what was our thinking was on that. He responds, none. We just didn't tell them. Thinking under new model that it doesn't matter. So this to me shows that they obviously thought about this. They obviously thought, this suggests that they thought about not telling Walgreens. They're withholding information. They're withholding that the analyzer, their whole procedure is not as how they represented it. Is that fraudulent, or was this just a mistake, an oversight? We'll have to see. But he says none. We just didn't tell them. And then Sunny says, but attacks like this scare them as they scare everyone. And Elizabeth said, yeah. So right here is when this is the beginning of the end of Theranos, in my opinion, right? Walgreens knows there's a problem. They've got a problem with Walgreens and other investors that are going to bail. People start bailing after this, but this is during the time period that several of those patient counts took place. And also, this could be certainly argued. These texts could certainly be argued to show the knowledge of these two and whether or not they were making false statements to Walgreens regarding how their technology worked, what was going on with the blood testing in the Walgreens Wellness Centers or the Theranos Wellness Centers in Walgreens. But Walgreens was freaking out and they were bailing, right? They didn't want to talk to them without the lawyers. So these texts, I think, are, in my opinion, very incriminating because they tie Balwani to show that he was the one who was responsible for what was going on at Walgreens, i.e. the patient counts. And as Dan Edlin testified, he was the one. He was the point person with Walgreens. So these texts also show that the two of them present well. What does that mean to you? Does that mean that we're not transparent? Well, Sunny was calling her on it. So I don't know. Does that make him less culpable? I don't know. You tell me. Okay, so that's my analysis. What's yours? Leave a comment, leave a question, and please do subscribe because I'm planning on doing some live streams, and those are only going to be open to people who subscribe. So please subscribe to this channel. And please support my work by subscribing. And thank you very much to all of those of you who have subscribed. And I will keep you posted through the community channel, or I'll put a video out there regarding the live streams. So thank you very much for watching. Hit the like button. Hit the bell notification. And thank you again for watching. And do subscribe.